Drew Lewis, thank you for being, first off, thank you for being on. Man, this is
Yeah.
exciting for me. I've known you for 2 decades now. That's like a
Yeah.
big way
Oh,
of
is this
saying
a
it.
Texas A&M
This is a
connection?
Texas
All right.
connection right here, man.
Yeah.
Drew and I were in a leadership group together, and we were also in we just climbed at the rock wall a whole lot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so he was always better than I was. This is way more introduction than any of our other guest gets, by the way.
Great. Well, I actually got paid to be at the rock wall too. So I had an unfair
Is that what that
advantage.
was? I was
I
paying.
worked there. Yeah, I worked there. So
Oh man,
Yeah.
you had a better setup than I did for sure.
Yeah.
All right, you are now a market leader right there in Louisville, Kentucky, for a company called Project 202. You'll do experience driven user experience app development and
Yeah, any
market
sort of
research, all sorts
software.
of stuff. Software.
Yeah. So it's pretty broad reaching, like software strategy, design, development, like end-to-end capabilities from the idea through the implementation.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So tell us a little bit about let's start with your customer base. Tell us who you work for. Who's your executives? Who's your clients?
Yeah, it's in the company size, it's really diverse. Like we've worked with well-funded startups, like literally coming like back of napkin idea and helping them grow up through global enterprise companies. I don't remember the exact number. It's either like 6 or 7 of the Fortune 10 we are working with or have worked with recently. So across
Like
the spectrum,
not number 6 or 7, or is it 6 or 7 of the 10?
That's right.
6 or 7 of the 10. Yes.
Holy moly, that's awesome.
Yeah. So super fun because I mean, they've got big problems to solve, right? And that's where we fit. So no matter the size of the company, like we're going to work with people that care about changing experiences because experience drives business. And that is true in a lot of ways.
That's a big
whether
statement.
you're wanting to like not spend too much on the software you built, so you build the right thing, or you want some loyalty, or like there's any number of reasons that tie in, but software like experience drives business always.
I suspect that there's a very good reason that people hire you over some of the other competition. Y'all don't walk into a room and just push pixels. You're not walking into a room and just like taking marching orders.
Yeah, absolutely. Generally, we like to scope a project. Like, here's a problem we have, whether it's fully known or not, and we'll work with our clients even before we like start an engagement to say, what's the issue? What are you doing? What are you trying to achieve? Okay, like here are ways we can approach solving that together. So that's like more of an ideal setup, but we will do what we call embedding experts, which is like a person or a couple people embedding on one of our clients, like Scrum teams, like a team that's delivering software. But we're going to tell you, like, we're not going to show up and push pixels, like you said. We're going to show up with a brain and a voice. So if you say to do something that doesn't make sense, we're going to tell you, right? So if you don't want just like if you want just a yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, that's not us, because we want to partner well. We want to push a better experience. And that's not always what our clients come with. Like, and not that their ideas are wrong or bad or broken. Often it's just like an iteration of it. Like, let's work together on the foundation that you have, which is good, but let's make it world class. Let's make it experience changing. Let's make it so that your clients are pumped about working with you because. And that's where we try and serve our clients.
So there's a big learning curve on the front of any project, and you guys take that deep understanding component very seriously, right? So I remember in the past we were talking about how you will have some of your staff actually sitting on the sofa helping somebody go through an order on an app. Can you run us through that sort of story?
Yeah, absolutely. And internally we've got it, like nobody uses this terminology, but it's what we say. We call it revealing reality because they're unmet, undiscovered.
I like that language.
User needs, right? So we want to work with the users to uncover those unmet needs so that when we design and build, we're fixing a problem, right? So one example of like literally sitting on a couch with some of these people is, man, you can ask, I guess before I get into that, like what it looks like, you can ask like, hey, how does this work? And generally people will be like, oh, it's okay. Or you can say, what if I added this feature? And generally people will say, yeah, go for it. But you're going to get like feature bloat and tech debt and things that aren't going to make for an optimal experience, right? And so a customer came to us and said, hey, we sell pizza. We want you to redo the mobile app because we want to sell more pizza, right? Go figure.
Makes sense.
Pizza. Yeah. And so instead of just saying, oh, here's some best practices we can use in your mobile app, which we could have, we said, hey, let's go and actually sit on a couch and say, hey, Tim, order a pizza. And we'd watch, like, are you picking up an app? Are you making a phone call? Are you getting your laptop? Like, what does this actually look like? And then we're going to say stuff like, hey, this may feel weird, but we'd love it if you verbally process, like, what are you thinking about? Why are you doing this? And we might ask more like deeper questions along the way. So, right, maybe Tim, you're ordering and you're like, hey, it's Tuesday. I always order pizza on Tuesday. And it's always this order. Like, I wish the button was there that would just be like, it's Tuesday, give me my order, right? And this is a couple years old, so that exists for everybody now, right? But at the time, it didn't. So we needed a it's Tuesday button, right? And there was a handful of folks that were always like, had a kid in one arm. So legit, if they couldn't order one-handed, the experience was broken and they might not order right. They might just go microwave something instead because like the kid on their arm.
That's a reality.
Yeah, exactly. So then this is where it gets super fun. We're sitting in some of these living rooms and we're like, hey, order. And somebody would, pull up our customer's app and we dig in a little bit. Hey, why are you ordering from this pizza place?
Yeah.
And they'd say stuff like dessert. And go, oh, like back the truck up for a minute. Like, we asked you to order pizza. What's going on? And there's a subset of people that were always ordering from our client because at the time they were the only one that offered pizza and dessert. And so when you start with the experience, you start with the user, like, oh, we could have gone and rebuilt the app and focused on pizza and we would have missed like a whole subset of people and a marketing campaign for our client, by the way, that said, hey, here's a problem you have. We solve that and nobody else does.
Right.
So when you start with the user, you really uncover cool things that aren't even necessarily intentional all the time. So that's a fun way to demonstrate what we do.
So I hear two things. I hear strategic insights that really can only be harvested out of that moment by somebody who has a trained eye to know what it is that they're looking for. And then I also hear that there's a deep driver here to eliminate friction, right? Yeah. So if you have an insight and you can eliminate friction, then intuitively right there, we're really on a good track.
Yeah, absolutely. Like 100%. I mean, I think others use this term, but we call it the happy path, right? Like, we know what somebody's trying to do, right? Like, what's the insight? What's the goal? What are we solving for? Where are we taking them? And generally that's gonna be tied to a business goal of our client, right? Like to sell pizza, for instance. But then also eliminate friction. Like, what's the happy path? What's the easiest way to help them intuitively where they don't need their handheld, get from A to Z, like to actually do the thing they're there to do. And the crazy thing is, like in software, like there are articles out there about this, and I'm not going to be accurate on the number, but it's hundreds of millions of dollars wasted, I think yearly, in like software that's thrown away. Like somebody spends whatever on building something and it doesn't launch because, you know what, like, oh, we couldn't meet these goals, or it launches and nobody adopts it because it was a good idea, but foundationally it didn't meet needs of a user, or there was too much friction, to your point, right? And so when you start with the user, you do front load the effort. You do put more time and energy in upfront, but by the time you're building something, which in software is the expensive part, it's not the design, it's when you put in a Scrum team and you've got a lot of people putting code, like that's the cost.
Yes.
So if you can make that simpler so that like when it gets launched, there's not a page one rewrite. where you have to like break it and start over. It's iterative growth from there. Like, man, that again was an investment up front, but ends up being so much less long term, and means your product's going to get used, right? It's going to get adopted, going to be successful because you know there's a need in the market that you're reaching.
Switching gears a little bit, tell me about the name Project 202.
Yeah, for sure. I always wish it was like some beautiful, amazing story. There's some fun too. Like Peter Eckert is one of our main co-founders, and he's German, hence the K in Project.
Great.
And then it was him and buddy, like, so two of them like sitting around the table together. And I think it was even like working on their second project, right? So they had started something before, you know, to whatever level of success, and two of them around a table working on their second project. So Project 202.
There you go.
I like that. I like that. Kind of keeps the DNA right there in the room. I like that. Yeah. So tell me a little bit also about
by the way, I knew it could not have been 202 years of software development. I did know at least that much.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's
not
good.
quite, but we're approaching it. Yeah.
Pushing it. You guys actually, you're approaching 20 years as a company, aren't you?
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I guess you could make a play with 202 on that, right? Somehow. I'm not clever enough in the moment to tell you how we would do that, but yeah, we hit 20 years in next year in 23.
That's pretty cool.
Y'all are coast to coast, or actually maybe even international at this point. Yes.
Yeah. So coast to coast, we've got offices in a lot of the major like cities. I could rattle them off, I guess. San Fran, Seattle, Chicago, Dallas, Austin, Atlanta, Louisville, which I like to think is major, but really isn't, and Boston.
That's huge.
So that's the U.S. offices. We also have one in Medellin, Colombia. And then this last year, we made an acquisition of a company called Rome Digital. So they're now a Project 202 company, still functioning under their brand, but they're based out of New Zealand. So New Zealand and Australia is where they are, and they're opening in Singapore soon. I think if they haven't already, it's around the corner.
Wonderful.
So, yeah.
Well, I have a question about what did COVID do to you guys? Is it the case that your project managers and the way that you run your systems, you guys were able to just completely adapt and flow and fluctuate, or did it feel particularly disruptive to you guys?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say the honest answer is it's sort of both, and sort of both because as a services company, we're impacted when our clients are impacted, right? Mm-hmm. Like airlines, for instance, we in our Dallas office had a really consistent team on an airline that we'd worked with for years, but the airlines just tanked, right? Like, no pun intended. I guess I was going to say crashed. So anyway, but they were struggling, and so of course they're like, well, how do we save money? How do we save people? Well, we stopped working with partners, and so stuff like that happened where we lost significant business because of the impacts of COVID. But to your other point, it was pretty seamless for us to move to being fully remote because of how we do work. Because we are digitally driven. There are already tools out there that we were using that were pretty seamless to like transition stuff from in-person to remote. So an example, out of the revealing reality work we do, that in-person field study where we're uncovering those unmet needs, we'll have a bunch of like sticky notes historically that are physical, and we're like throwing them up on the walls and like affinitizing them together, like grouping, these are themes, and you come up to ultimately these like really key takeaways. And so that was fun to do with a group in person, like us and our clients. But like COVID hits and nobody's going anywhere in person, right? So, but there's a tool called Miro. I don't know if y'all have used it, but it's an online like collaboration tool that we'd already used, but it just pretty seamlessly allowed us to shift some of those into digital workshops, collaborations. So we were already doing them. We were just able to leverage them more with clients. So yeah, long and short of it, we were impacted, but able to recover pretty quickly and easily because of the way we do work.
Yeah. I also imagine that the clients that were not as heavily impacted were able to make some better headway. We're able to move a little bit faster during the different pacing of the country.
Yeah, I think the reality is, and you can read up on it from like previous recession type things as well, right? Where there's major impacts to our country's economy. The companies that have chosen in those times to invest are the ones that come out of recession, pandemic, whatever, ahead.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we did have partners that said, this is really hard and we've lost business, but we care, we're going to invest and we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And seeing their growth has been pretty cool. And then, right, like we're a couple years into the pandemic / maybe approaching an end, who knows, right? But yeah, oh yes, please. And companies that didn't initially are now saying like, oh my gosh, we're behind, we need to catch up.
Yeah.
Or they're like, oh, we got revenue again, the economy's coming back, now we'll invest. So we got the early adopters, we got the people that are like playing catch up or have money again, and they're saying, now we're going to do it. Plus, man, like hiring has gotten insane. That's another impact of COVID on software. Is remote first was like sort of in software if you were a big enough, progressive enough company, but now it's like, oh man, you have to be remote first in a lot of ways, or you can't hire some of the top talent. And so it's just like a massive competition for talent, which ties in because people can't hire. So we would be working with clients and they'd say like, oh, we need you to do this scope of work. And now they're saying, oh, we need you to do this scope of work. And we were going to hire 2 people to also handle these other things, but we can't. So can you do that now? Right. So it's like on this end of things, it's even helping us ramp up even more, because a lot of times a consulting agency like ours brings people in that like an enterprise
more curated resources.
Yeah, they will like enterprise. Some of them are really progressive and thoughtful. Some of them aren't, right? Like this isn't a blanket statement about any company, but a lot of people in the creative space like to have changing targets. And if you become a person like if you're working for a company, if you're in-house, like you might be on the same project for years of just like continuing to tweak and iterate. And sometimes it can feel very like the pixel pushing. And so the fact that we have a variety of clients can, even if somebody's been on a given client for, you know, a really long time, say, hey, you know what, for the sake of your development, even though that client's going to continue, we'll pull you off and put you on something else so you can continue to learn and grow. So there's an appeal to consulting agencies that sometimes brings people that, you know, companies can't hire. So anyway, all that to say, impacted.
That's a great thought. So, and it helps with your talent retention because, I mean, we work with creatives all the time, and it is easy to get burned out on things that happen in repetition. Around here, we call it broccoli and mangoes. And there is some work that is broccoli work, and it's just the work that has to be done. And we know it's not high five mango, the sweet, wonderful stuff of life.
And also often the broccoli work is the kind of work that makes you a better X, Y, or Z.
That's right.
It does develop you.
Yeah.
But you have to have some sweetness to life.
Yeah. Yes. Or people will totally walk out the door. So, and you wind up burning out talent that really is wonderful. So it's amazing how you have to like be tuned in, even kind of psychologically, emotionally to people to go, hey, you look like you're struggling. We're going to help you get moving.
And to your point, when you know, a outside firm or agency actually has the ability to move people around, to do some balance of broccoli mangoes. And if a company wants to build that internal, it might all be broccoli work. It might just completely be day after day, iteration after iteration of the same project.
Yeah.
That is weird.
In some places, it's like red tape, beating your head against the wall to like get anything done. And so, you're not necessarily, and then again, like some companies do this really well, but a lot of them, you're not inherently valued. Like they don't see the value of a UX person or a front end developer or whatever. So knowing that they can come to a place where they feel valued is great. And I think the reality is, honestly, we're not perfect at it, right? Like we've had churn here, absolutely, over the last, couple of years in COVID. But one thing that we try and do is, some people say take their own medicine. We've started to say like drink your own champagne, and I don't think that's unique to us. I think others say that too. But we want to take the methodology of like revealing those unmet user needs for our clients, but we want to do it for us too. So
That's
we
right.
actually have dedicated right now in particular to what is experience like for our employees. Like, and our employees are one of our, like, they're a customer group, right?
Absolutely.
Like, and so if we can't take care of them, man, like, what are we doing? So it's uncovered a lot of stuff. And some of it's like, oh gosh, like we need to fix that. And so like, oh, we're all right over here. This is pretty good. But regardless, it's given a really clear path to here's what we need, here's where we're going, here's how we're doing it. And employees, we care. Like we, I don't know if I can cuss or not, but in my head I am. We care. And so like, anyway, we're gonna do what's best for you. And so here's what it looks like. Here's even our roadmap to like better tools for you in the near and long term.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is fascinating that the internal woo and wooing of your own talent base and your own people is happening simultaneously with your external facing woo. And it's rather like, I mean, I've been married over 20 years and it's like, you don't ever stop. It's not just, hey, look, I'm committed to you. I said I love you that one time and I'll let you know if something changes. It's not like that. There's just this constant, like, you're valued, you're appreciated. We're working to make sure that you have a good experience here. Yeah, it's challenging.
Yes.
I think
Marriage and work.
I think
Yes.
it's really interesting that you're in some ways, and I'm not saying that this is the full expression of Project 202, but in the mind of your client, your brand is really tied to, this is a dedicated, high proficient, high talent agency. And so your product or your brand is actually your talent pool.
Yes.
Right. And so, I mean, the dynamic there of, that decision moment where they say, well, we could do this internal, but also these people might actually have pulled away our best hopes of doing this even internally.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to your point, like, I forget the exact quote. We had a client recently say, like, you're comfortably expensive or something like that, right? Like,
that's pretty good.
Like you're bringing value, and because you're more like it, all that ties to what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
We've had clients also say, like, man, we bring our hardest work to you, right? Like, we've got a team and we trust them and they do good work, but when we've got a really tough problem to solve, like, we call you guys. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the word expensive, we laugh about that all the time. Expensive just means there's something not equitable in the value. So it eliminates this word expensive. If there's so much value that's coming across, it feels like, it almost feels cheap, you know. Mm-hmm. We couldn't have gotten there by ourselves, certainly. So cool.
So tell us a little bit about what y'all are excited about next. You mentioned the word acquisition. Is that the horizons for Project 202?
Man, we've grown a lot, just organically, starting in Dallas and Austin. So there was an acquisition / merger that brought Dallas and Austin together, but then Seattle was organic. Boston grew, Louisville sort of organically, although Boston and Louisville were just acquired together. So there's been organic, but also inorganic growth. So acquisitions, and most recently it's been acquisitions. I don't think we have, from my seat, what I know, another acquisition that is teed up to happen in the next handful of months. But we're always going to be looking for more partners, for more people that think like us. So our mission currently is, like, we exist to deliver better experiences for people everywhere. And so even last year we said, as a company, we want to be more everywhere, right? If we're going to deliver better experiences everywhere, that means we sort of got to grow and be in those different places. So yeah, I think some of it will continue to happen through acquisition. I think honestly, some of it will happen as we grow. Like, Louisville right now is a small office, but I mean, it's within an hour and a half or 2 hours of Cincinnati, Indy, Nashville, that, like, could be another sort of massive hub. And Yeah. So anyway, there's still lots of room for us to grow all of our local offices. Yeah, but I don't know that that's what we're excited about. I get to your question, like, what are you excited about? And I think growth is part of it, but I think, man, I think internally we're excited about the work we're doing for our team. Honestly, like I think there's a lot of excitement on all of our all hands calls. Like, what are you doing? What are we doing? It's Project Chrysalis. What's Chrysalis delivering now, right? Like, what are we working toward as a team? I think some of that has come with a desire to focus on our overall services. So we've got a couple people that are focused not just on like internal, but like serving our clients. Like we've got great methodology and great approach, but you know, we've been around almost 20 years and it's iterated with us, but we're continuing to say, all right, like, has it grown enough? Where do we need to continue to grow? So we have 2 full-time people dedicated to our service strategy. Like, what are we offering? How are we offering it? Is it adding enough value to the point you were making a minute ago? Man, you're not just selling a dollar or a human. Like, what is the problem? If it's solved, what does that mean to you? Can you accomplish it? No. So what's it worth to you to solve it, right? Like, what is the value we are bringing to you and your business? And to be able to say, like, we're not just settling for like, we've done it well and we're going to keep doing it the same, like saying over and over, like, we want to grow, we want to iterate, we want to improve. I think we're about stuff like that. That's that's showing that we care about ourselves and you to continue to grow. So
good. Drew, last question. Your favorite project ever? You've been there 3 years. What's the one that stands out as like that one as a high water mark for me?
Oh, man, I just had like 10 come to mind. All right, I'm gonna tell a story about one that I didn't do, but I love it because it's another just great example of you got to understand your user and their need. So a few years ago, a client came to us and they were in the home loan, home mortgage space. And they're honestly, like, they're big, they're enterprise, they're known for like good focused on digital experiences, but their conversion rate of like selling loans to people was about 5%. So people came, clicked on their link, and then only about 5% that engaged with them actually bought the loan. And they're like, okay, like this isn't, we can't sustain
we can do better.
Conversion, right? You'll get that. So we started mapping out the journey of their customers and not just buying a home. And ultimately, like, long and short of it, they were selling a loan, but people don't care about a loan. They want a home. They want a place that's like their own. And so looking at that journey of buying the home, we help them figure out that if they engage the beginning of the home buying journey, like, let's dream with you about where you can live and what that can be like for your family and the memories you can make engaging there, that when the time came that somebody needed the loan, they bought it. And their conversion rate went from about 5% to about 75%.
There you go.
Us helping them engage in the right place. Dang. And some of that came with like a little redesign, but really, like, it wasn't their system that was broken. It was how they were engaging their users and what problem they were trying to solve. So
very few, that's interesting. I guess it's true. Very few people think about, I'm looking for a financing, like I'm looking for a loan product. That's not how people buy. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you do, Tim. I don't, I guess. All right.
Yeah, ones and zeros.
That's
man, Drew, thank you so much for being on today. Those were awesome stories. And I love all of the work that Project 202 is doing. And
all the best.
And hearing your approach to it has been fascinating. So thanks for your time, man.
No, absolutely. I love it. I love having the excuse to chat and catch up. And I love what we do. So happy to share whenever I can.
Love it.
All the best to you.
Thanks.
Take care.
Cheers.